Apocalypse Now was never supposed to survive. When Francis Ford Coppola arrived in the Philippines in 1976, what should have been a 4-month shoot became a 238-day descent into actual madness. A typhoon destroyed the entire set. The lead actors suffered a near-fatal heart attack. Coppola himself had a mental breakdown and threatened suicide multiple times. Helicopters were borrowed from a real military fighting a real war, and the budget exploded from $12 million to over $31 million. But from that chaos emerged the greatest war film ever made, a movie that nearly killed everyone who made it. These are 20 weird facts about Apocalypse Now. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Fact 1. The original star was fired after 2 weeks. Harvey Keitel was originally cast as Captain Willard, the lead character of Apocalypse Now. He arrived in the Philippines ready to play the traumatized soldier on a deadly mission. But after 2 weeks of filming, Coppola realized something was terribly wrong. Keitel's performance was too aggressive and confrontational for the character. Willard needed to be passive and observational throughout his journey into darkness. Keitel played him like a man ready to fight at every moment instead. Coppola made the painful decision to fire his lead actor after significant footage had already been shot. All of Keitel's scenes had to be completely reshot with a new actor. The production lost weeks of work and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Martin Sheen was brought in as a last-minute replacement to save the film. Fact 2. Martin Sheen was drunk during the opening scene. The iconic opening scene shows Captain Willard alone in a Saigon hotel room having a mental breakdown. Martin Sheen was genuinely intoxicated during filming of that entire sequence. It was his 36th birthday, and he had been drinking heavily before cameras started rolling. Coppola decided to film anyway, hoping the alcohol would bring authenticity to the scene. Sheen improvised most of his actions, including punching the mirror with his bare fist. The blood you see in that scene is completely real, from Sheen cutting his hand on broken glass. Sheen was so drunk he did not feel the pain until hours later when he sobered up. The crew was genuinely concerned for his safety as he spiraled during the take. Fact 3. Marlon Brando arrived overweight and completely unprepared. Marlon Brando was paid $3.5 million to play Colonel Kurtz for 3 weeks of filming. He arrived in the Philippines enormously overweight and completely unprepared for the role. Brando had not read the script or the source novel, Heart of Darkness. He had no idea who his character was supposed to be or what he represented. Coppola was horrified when he saw Brando's physical condition and lack of preparation. They spent the first week just talking about the character and what the film meant. Brando improvised most of his dialogue based on those conversations, rather than the written script. Coppola filmed him in shadows and darkness to hide his massive weight from audiences. Close-ups were carefully framed to show only his face and avoid his body. Fact 4. A real typhoon destroyed the entire production. In May 1976, Typhoon Olga struck the Philippines and devastated the apocalypse. Now, production completely. The massive storm destroyed every set that had been built over months of construction work. Kurtz's compound was flattened. Helicopters were damaged beyond immediate repair. Equipment worth millions of dollars was scattered across the jungle. The production had to shut down completely for 2 months while everything was rebuilt from scratch. Cast and crew were sent home while Coppola tried to salvage what remained. The delays cost the production millions and pushed the budget into dangerous territory. Coppola considered abandoning the film entirely during this period. He felt the universe itself was trying to stop him from completing his vision. Fact 5. The Philippine military kept taking their helicopters back. The production borrowed helicopters from the Philippine military to film the famous helicopter attack sequences. But the Philippines was fighting an actual war against communist insurgents during production. Military commanders would recall their helicopters in the middle of filming to fight real battles. Coppola would be setting up a shot and suddenly all his helicopters would fly away. The crew would wait for hours or days for the helicopters to return from actual combat missions. Sometimes pilots would return with bullet holes in their aircraft from real enemy fire. The production had no control over when they would have access to the military equipment. This unpredictability added months to the shooting schedule and enormous costs to the budget. Coppola was essentially making a war movie, while a real war was happening around him constantly. Fact 6. Francis Ford Coppola had multiple mental breakdowns. The stress of Apocalypse Now pushed Coppola to the edge of complete psychological collapse. He suffered multiple mental breakdowns during the 238-day shoot in the Philippine jungle. Coppola threatened suicide on several occasions in front of cast and crew members. He would disappear into the jungle alone for hours, refusing to speak to anyone. His weight fluctuated dramatically as he stopped eating regularly during the worst periods. Coppola gambled his entire personal fortune on the film, including his house and winery. If Apocalypse Now failed, he would lose everything he had built in his career. The pressure of potential financial ruin combined with creative challenges nearly destroyed him completely. His wife Eleanor filmed a documentary about the production that captured his deteriorating mental state. That documentary, called Hearts of Darkness, remains one of the most revealing portraits of filmmaking ever made. Fact 8. The Playboy Bunny scene was completely improvised. The scene where Playboy playmates perform for soldiers was largely improvised on set. Coppola had only a basic outline of what he wanted the sequence to accomplish. The actresses playing the playmates were given minimal direction about their performances. The chaos you see on screen with soldiers rushing the stage was partially real and uncontrolled. Extras got too excited during filming and genuinely tried to reach the performers. Security had to step in multiple times to protect the actresses from overly aggressive extras. Coppola loved the authentic chaos and kept filming through the confusion. The helicopter evacuation at the end of the sequence was added when things got too out of control. What appears to be a scripted descent into madness was actually genuine disorder that Coppola captured brilliantly. Fact 9. Real dead bodies were used as props on set. The production designer for Apocalypse Now obtained real human cadavers to use as props in certain scenes. The bodies came from a man who supplied corpses to medical schools in the Philippines. These actual human remains were placed around sets to create authentic images of war death. When authorities discovered what had happened, a criminal investigation was launched immediately. The supplier was arrested for grave robbing and illegal trafficking of human remains. Coppola and the production team were questioned by Philippine authorities about their involvement. They claimed they did not know the bodies were real and thought they were elaborate props. The scandal nearly shut down the production and created international controversy. Some of those real human remains appear in the final cut of the film audiences watched. Fact 10. Dennis Hopper was completely out of control. Dennis Hopper arrived to play the photojournalist character in a state of complete drug-fueled chaos. He was using cocaine heavily and could barely remember his lines from take to take. Hopper would ramble incoherently between shots about philosophy and war and photography. Coppola struggled to direct him because Hopper could not focus on instructions for more than a few seconds. The long, rambling monologues his character delivers were largely Hopper improvising while intoxicated. Marlon Brando reportedly hated working with Hopper and refused to share scenes with him. Their confrontation scene was filmed with each actor performing separately at different times. The footage was edited together to create the illusion they were in the same room. Hopper later admitted he had no memory of filming many of his scenes. Fact 11. The ending was rewritten dozens of times. Coppola had no idea how to end Apocalypse Now throughout the entire production. He wrote and rewrote the ending dozens of times without finding a satisfying conclusion. The original script had a massive battle sequence with Kurtz's compound being destroyed by an airstrike. Coppola filmed that ending but felt it was too conventional for what the film had become. He considered ending with Willard taking over Kurtz's army and becoming the new Mad King. Another version had Willard dying alongside Kurtz in a mutual destruction. The sacrificial ending with Willard killing Kurtz during a ritual ceremony was created late in production. Even after filming wrapped, Coppola continued editing different endings during post-production. Test audiences saw multiple versions with different conclusions before the final cut was locked. Fact 12. The film took 3 years to edit. Principal photography wrapped in 1977, but Apocalypse Now did not reach theaters until 1979. Coppola spent nearly 3 years editing over 1 million feet of filmed footage. He had shot so much material that organizing it became a monumental challenge. Editor Walter Murch worked with 4 different editing teams simultaneously to process everything. The original cut ran over 5 hours long and was completely unwatchable for general audiences. Coppola struggled to find the structure that would make the film coherent and powerful. He showed rough cuts to friends and colleagues who gave contradictory feedback constantly. The editing process became as chaotic and expensive as the actual filming had been. Fact 13. Coppola mortgaged everything he owned. United Artists originally funded Apocalypse Now, but the budget overruns became too extreme. The studio refused to provide additional financing as costs spiraled out of control completely. Coppola was forced to mortgage his personal assets to keep the production alive. He put up his house and his car and his share of The Godfather profits as collateral. His Napa Valley winery was leveraged against completion of the film. If Apocalypse Now failed, Coppola would lose absolutely everything he had earned in his career. His wife Eleanor later said she watched her husband gamble their entire future on this single film. Fact 14. The Ride of the Valkyries scene took weeks to film. The legendary helicopter attack sequence set to Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries took weeks to complete. Coppola coordinated dozens of helicopters with hundreds of extras and massive pyrotechnic effects simultaneously. Every explosion you see in that sequence was a real detonation that could only be filmed once. If the cameras missed the shot, the production had to rebuild everything and try again. Some explosions cost thousands of dollars and hours of preparation for just a few seconds of footage. The helicopters had to fly in precise formations while cameras rolled from multiple angles. Pilots complained about the dangerous flying conditions required to capture the shots Coppola wanted. Several near collisions occurred during filming when helicopters flew too close to each other. The sequence that runs about 10 minutes in the final film represents weeks of dangerous, exhausting work. Fact 15. Robert Duvall only worked for a few weeks. Robert Duvall delivered one of the most iconic performances in film history as Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore. His character dominates the helicopter attack sequence and provides the famous napalm quote, "But Duvall was only on set for a few weeks during the entire production. He arrived and filmed all of his scenes in a concentrated burst of activity." While the rest of the cast suffered through months of jungle chaos, Duvall escaped relatively unscathed. His limited time on set meant he avoided the typhoon and the heart attacks and the mental breakdowns. Duvall later said he had no idea how difficult the production had been until he saw the documentary. He received an Academy Award nomination for a performance filmed in just days. That brief, concentrated work created something that would define his entire career forever. Fact 16. The water buffalo sacrifice was completely real. The climactic scene where a water buffalo is sacrificed was not a special effect or a prop. The production filmed an actual ritual sacrifice performed by the Ifugao people of the Philippines. A real water buffalo was killed on camera in a traditional ceremony. The footage was intercut with Willard killing Kurtz to create a parallel between the two acts of violence. Animal rights organizations protested the film for years after its release because of this scene. Coppola defended the decision by arguing the ceremony would have happened regardless of filming. The Ifugao performed this ritual as part of their genuine cultural practices. The production simply documented something that was already going to occur. Nevertheless, the scene remains controversial and disturbing for many viewers who cannot separate the fiction from the real death. Fact 17. Lawrence Fishburne lied about his age to get cast. Lawrence Fishburne played Clean, the youngest soldier on the patrol boat crew. He was only 14 years old when production began in the Philippines. Fishburne had lied about his age, claiming to be 18 to get the role in the film. The production did not discover his real age until filming was well underway. By then, it was too late to replace him without costly reshoots and delays. Fishburne spent 2 years in the Philippine jungle during the extended production. He essentially grew up on the set of one of the most chaotic film productions in history. Fact 18. The documentary about making the film won awards. Eleanor Coppola filmed behind-the-scenes footage throughout the disastrous production. Her documentary Hearts of Darkness was released in 1991 and revealed the true chaos of making Apocalypse Now. The documentary showed Coppola's mental breakdowns and Sheen's heart attack and Brando's unprepared arrival. Critics praised it as one of the greatest documentaries about filmmaking ever created. Some argued the documentary was more compelling than the actual film it documented. Hearts of Darkness won multiple awards and became essential viewing for film students worldwide. It showed that great art often comes from impossible circumstances and personal sacrifice. The suffering that went into making Apocalypse Now was finally visible for audiences to understand. Fact 19. The film was booed at Cannes before winning. Apocalypse Now premiered at the 1979 Cannes Film Festival in an unfinished state. Coppola showed a work-in-progress version because post-production was still ongoing. Critics and audiences had mixed reactions to what they saw on screen that night. Some people booed the film, while others gave it standing ovations lasting several minutes. The controversy only increased anticipation for the theatrical release later that year. Despite the divided response, Apocalypse Now won the Palme d'Or, the highest prize at Cannes. It shared the award with The Tin Drum in an unusual split decision. Coppola was both validated and humiliated by the premiere experience simultaneously. He continued editing for months afterward before the film reached American theaters. Fact 20. The film almost destroyed and then saved Coppola. Apocalypse Now nearly ended Francis Ford Coppola's career and his life completely. The production pushed him to mental breakdown and financial ruin simultaneously. He emerged from the experience traumatized and exhausted beyond description. But when the film was finally released, audiences recognized its brilliance immediately. Apocalypse Now earned over $150 million worldwide and received 8 Academy Award nominations. It won Oscars for Best Cinematography and Best Sound and became a cultural phenomenon. The film that almost killed Coppola became his greatest artistic achievement. It proved that sometimes madness and chaos create things that controlled productions never could. Coppola had descended into his own heart of darkness and returned with something immortal.